The IB program is really centered around the student himself or herself, and at the very core of that are the 10 learner profile traits. The learner profile are 10 character traits that over the course of 2 years in our program, our kids are really encouraged to develop or continue developing or even engage in some reflective thought about what they do well, what they'd like to do better, and how the learner profile can really affect their lives going forward past school.
Have both the junior and the senior class do a reflection on which traits they think they already do pretty well, and then which traits that they can intentionally focus on throughout the year. And we do Flipgrid videos where they can then look back on those videos as they go through the program and see how they've improved, and maybe where they still need to keep focusing.
My 2 traits that I feel like I'm good at is being caring and being reflective.
An admirer, caring and principled,
caring and open-minded. One of the traits that I want to work on this year is being more of a communicator.
to become more of a thinker,
Being a risk taker.
Being a better inquirer.
One of our goals as a teaching team this year in the IB program is to really intentionally focus on the use of the learner profile, whether it be in our lesson planning process, whether it be in the activities that we choose in our classroom, whether it be in how we interact with our kids. It's really encouraging them to really take a strong, hard look at that learner profile, those 10 character traits, and say to themselves, where do I see myself in these 10 traits? Where can I do better? What do I do well? What can I continue to grow? What can I continue to evolve? And for us as teachers, it's really important for us to think about, how can we intentionally use these within our classroom?
Usually adopt more of a reflective approach. I know that's one of the characteristics of the profile, so that they'll reflect a lot how they can improve, how the learner profile is used in a lot of facets in chemistry. I typically like to spread out the characteristics that you might see in the learner profile and just have students hone in on that characteristic or two for one particular day.
So I encourage them to be good mathematical communicators. So I want them to make sure that they're justifying all their solutions, justifying their work.
I like to be balanced in my teaching, so I encourage students to focus on their physical health, their mental and emotional health, as well as their intellectual part of the class.
One of the focal points of the course is studies that are done and relating the studies to issues in psychology, and one of the learner profiles is caring. And so with that, we always talk about the ethics of the study.
At the beginning of the year, I separate the kids into groups and give each group a trait. So they just focus on that trait and what that trait means. And then I do a whole activity where we watch a TED Talk video and they have to find that trait and they explore that trait and then present it. And so then we get a really good conversation going about what each trait looks like, besides just a definition, like what it looks like in the classroom, what it looks like in the real world.
My strength as a teacher is sort of questioning, and I use these types of questions to sort of get students to take an idea that we're sort of looking at maybe at a superficial level and then critically think about how they could approach that idea differently and engage as thinkers.
I'm encouraging students to use the learning profile by making them comfortable to be risk takers. That's one of the elements of the IB learner profile. And I think if students are comfortable in the class, they feel like they're a part of the class, they are willing to take risks, and that allows them to be comfortable with the other elements of the learner profile.
Another learner profile that is very important in the world language programs for IB is to make sure that our students are risk takers. It's impossible to learn and flourish in a foreign language if you're not willing to take risks. You can't learn a foreign language if you're not open-minded, and you can't reach any kind of fluency if you're not willing to take risks with the language.
Trying to do this year for the first time is I'm trying to create a platform for students to be a little bit more self-directed, and so I had them take the different units that we use in world language and then think up any topics that they would be interested in within that category, and then I had them take all those topics and then smash it apart to come up with different types of specific issues, and then come up with a list that they all created as a collective Google document that they can refer back to. And what I'm planning to do is giving them time to go find a topic that interests them most, so they can be intrinsically motivated to research it and talk about it and write about it, and then use that self-direction to sort of become more knowledgeable about that topic or inquire about it and engage with it in a meaningful way to them.
Recently I had them do an assignment where they chose 3 of the traits of the learner profile, ones that they exemplified the best, and gave reasons for why they thought they exemplified those things. And then also I had them choose another learner profile trait where they could improve in chemistry specifically.
We just recently did looked at the Fibonacci sequence and the golden ratio, and we looked at the relationship between the numbers in the Fibonacci sequence and how it, I guess, forms the golden ratio. And then the golden ratio is depicted in art and your human body and just in nature.
Students in the course have to do an internal assessment where they have to perform an experiment. And so they do an experiment, they have to replicate it, and they go through the whole process of creating it and really inquiring. They get to choose which experiment they want to replicate, so it's something that interests them, but then they have to really figure out how to do the research, how to form the experiment to replicate it as close as possible.
In econ, we tackle big problems, and that's sort of the part of the thinker. One of the learner profile is the thinker. Complex problems that are going on in the world. We're talking inflation, we're talking unemployment, we're talking income inequality, those kinds of things. So they have to wrestle with some pretty big issues and fulfill that role of thinker.
The learner profile encourages them to really take risks. It allows them to become more reflective, more caring, to think about things in a different way, to communicate very effectively with their peers or whoever they happen to be working with, or in whatever stage of life they may be in. So much of what we learn from our kids after they have graduated from the IB program is that what they bring forward into their careers, into college, whatever their next steps in life are, they're really centered around what they learn about themselves through the learner profile.